I don't think that you can find anyone in the United States more pro-Second Amendment than I am. Nobody in this audience or in our viewing audience has ever filled out a government form that allows you to go to church on Sunday. If I ask people to show me their church permit, they look at me like I have two heads, and they emphatically explain to me that they have a right to freedom of religion, and they do not require government permission to exercise it. And I heartily agree. You do not require a permit in order to exercise a right. And I have a right to keep and bear arms. I have a right to protect myself and the lives of my children, and I will never give up my guns. If I can get my finger on the trigger, the government will never get its hands on my guns.
Thank you, Mr. Bednarik. Mr. Cobb.
There are too many guns on the streets. There absolutely are. Assault weapons, rampant murder, killing. The reality is that there are too many guns on the streets, and I take exception, and I knew that we would get to something that we could disagree with. I will take exception to the idea that the Second Amendment grants everyone the right to as much firepower as they can get. I hope that we would agree, for example, that we don't have a right to nuclear weapons, that we don't have a right to biological weapons. It is always a function of drawing appropriate lines. And although one does not need a permit to go to church, one does, in fact, need a permit to catch a fish, to drive an automobile. You know, there are many things that I support rational, sane gun safety laws. And I want to say, I too am a gun owner. I own a shotgun and a handgun. I've grown up hunting, fishing in rural Texas. However, I'm proud of the Green Party's position on responsible gun safety laws. And to equate the notion of an individual's ability to get their hands on as much firepower as they possibly could to the Second Amendment, which specifically describes a well-regulated civil militia, I think is disingenuous. And so I completely disagree, and I do, in fact, support rational gun safety laws.
Thank you, Mr. Cobb. What do each candidate feel is the proper response against to foreign terrorism against Americans? Mr. Cobb?
Well, first of all, we should stop breeding it by getting the hell out of Iraq. But I want to actually address your question, sir, head on, because if I were President of the United States on September 11th of 2001, when the horrible criminal mass murder of the World Trade Center towers had happened, I would have understood that it was exactly that. It was a criminal act. It was an act of individuals who should have been hunted down and brought before a competent jurisdiction and tried in international court. The people of Afghanistan did not bomb the World Trade Center towers. To kill and maim thousands of innocents was beyond shameful. It was unconstitutional under the supreme law of the land of this country. It was illegal under international law, and it was immoral by any ethical or moral standards that one could possibly have. And I'm embarrassed, and I am angry that in my name the government killed innocent people not only in Afghanistan, but they're doing it today. If we want to address terrorism, we have to address the root causes of terrorism. And the root causes of terrorism today are a foreign policy that is based on protecting a transnational corporate empire. Folks, there is an empire today. It's not an American empire based on American values of liberty, justice, equality, and democracy. It is a corporate empire based on corporate values of greed, exploitation, and oppression. And if we ultimately want to address terrorism and the root causes of it, we have got to squarely address the fact that foreign policy in this country is breeding terrorism, not protecting us from it.
Thank you, Mr. Cobb. Mr. Bednarik?
Libertarians are not isolationists. We are non-interventionists. The September 11th tragedy was an international crime and a mass murder, and we should track down the people who perpetrated that crime and bring them to justice. To the best of my knowledge, that those perpetrators were Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda. Unfortunately, we're told that Al-Qaeda doesn't have a particular place. They kind of move around. You know, finding them is as difficult as nailing Jell-O to a tree. And apparently that is the excuse that we've been given for now going into Iraq, simply because they have a defined border. Sending 150,000 troops there was a mistake. Keeping them there compounds that mistake. 92% of the people in Iraq consider us occupiers rather than liberators. They do not want us there. And apparently the American strategy for winning hearts and influencing people is to blow up buildings and kill innocent civilians. When we continue to do that, we increase the threat of terrorism in the United States, and the only proper, moral, and rational solution is to bring our soldiers home as safely and quickly as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Bednarik. Do you understand the question? You want to repeat the question?
I understand it.
Okay.
We can both answer that.
Okay. Well, why don't you repeat the question?
The question is about our position on the 17th Amendment, which changes the way senators are chosen. Originally, the state legislatures were there to select the senators for the state, establishing a check on the growth of the federal government. In 1913, the 17th Amendment was presumably ratified, which changed the way we select our senators and allowed the general public to vote by popular vote on who the senators are. What that did was it removed some of the control that the state legislatures had over the federal government, and we now have a large House of Representatives and a small House of Representatives. And this completely violated the spirit of the Constitution, and I would work passionately to have it repealed.
Thank you. Mr. Cobb.
So, just to be clear, the question goes to the heart of the 17th Amendment, which actually gave us more democracy. Rather than having elected representatives choose for us our representatives into the United States Senate, the 17th Amendment, I'm proud and happy and grateful, actually changed the Constitution, and I think much for the better. So, be clear that what a critique of the 17th Amendment is a request that we return to less democracy. I think that we need more democracy in this country, so I'm glad that the 17th Amendment actually changed the Constitution of the United States, and I think that we need to open it up even more by abolishing the Electoral College in its entirety and electing a President of the United States with a majority rule. And, Mr. Anderson, I think that we should use instant runoff voting to elect a President of the United States. Let's guarantee that the President of the United States has the support of the majority of individual citizens. Let's respect one person, one vote. Let's move towards majority rule in this country. And let's begin to actually experience a little more democracy, not less.
Thank you, Mr. Cobb. What would the candidates do to reverse the trend that has started with this administration of abandoning treaties such as Kyoto, ABM? And they have also pulled out of the International Criminal Court. Mr. Bednarik?
Much like the Patriot Act, just because it is written on paper does not make it ethical or constitutional. The Constitution states that the Constitution and all treaties pursuant to the Constitution are the supreme law of the land. Any treaty which violates the life, liberty, and property of American citizens is not pursuant to the Constitution, and it is not a valid treaty, even if all of Congress has voted for it unanimously. So on a case-by-case basis, I would analyze these treaties. There are many treaties that I would basically eliminate because they give other countries control over American sovereignty. I am a United States citizen. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and we do not require foreign permission to protect our citizens or our property.
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate the question, and it's certainly true that this administration has been a horror when it comes to international treaties. But I have to take exception, sir, because it did not begin with this administration. Sadly, I think ever since Bill Clinton, we've seen a willingness to engage in this kind of erosion from the international community. And I'm proud of the fact that the Green Party understands that we really do live in a global village, and that we, the people of this country, need to participate in that global village responsibly, respectfully.